Guys, welcome back. Our next guest is calling for the abolition of the primary exit profile. We call it the PEP examination, saying it is undermining student confidence and failing to reflect the diverse realities of the Jamaican school system. Joining us this morning, University of the West Indies Professor in Educational Policy Planning and Leadership, Sir Canute Thomas. Canute. Thank you. Canute Thomas. Morning to you, Prof. How are you doing?
Professor, how are you?
Fine, thanks. Fine, thanks.
Good
Thanks for
job,
having
sir.
me.
Prof, let me tell you, yearly, we hear this every time it's PEP time. We hear parents, basically moaning in pain as
Yes.
well. And they're talking about the preparation that their kids are also,
Yes.
having to go through. But why? Why are you saying that, let's do away with PEP? Let's just, this is just too much. And it's not a good system for our students.
Yes. The first reason is that what the test is testing is different from what the children were being taught. Now, the test is part of what you call the National Standards Curriculum, and the NSC, which is a great curriculum, which is designed to teach children to think critically and to develop a range of skills. But the test doesn't test that. The test is a single document which tests children the same way across all schools, regardless of where the children are and regardless of the experiences they've had. So what I'm calling for is a more individualized, customized, regionalized, localized test, which ultimately takes account of the child's development. So the child enters at grade 1, and the system does what they call a GOILP. That's a profile of who the child is. The results of that GOILP should now be used to decide the child's growth path. And that growth path would be designed in consultation with the teacher, the parent, the child, and a host of other experts. Because a child's results may show that the child is hearing impaired or may have other kinds of developmental challenges. So you can't then send the child forward at the end of grade 1 to grade 2, regardless of what those challenges are. And you can't then, at the end of grade 6, 5 years later, test that child the same way you test all other children, regardless of what the findings of the child's competences and the lived realities during school have been. Let me say one other thing at this point. PEP starts at grade 4. You have a grade 4 test, a grade 5 test, and a grade 6 test, all right? With the grade 6 being the most traumatic for many children and many parents. But if you've been testing the children throughout school, why do this massive test that takes them through so much stress? Use the data on their performance over the period and then make an assessment as to the level to which, or the school to which they go at the end of grade 6. So I'm saying, rather than this pressurized, intense, traumatic test, use the data throughout school to decide where the child goes.
Yep.
But that data is drawn from an individualized set of plans. So the child who goes to, let's say, this high-end prep school and has had far more resources available should not be tested in the same way the child in rural Jamaica is tested.
Okay.
Professor, I know you'll correct me if I'm wrong. Last time I checked, some 30,000 would have taken
Correct.
that PEP exam or whatever you want to call it. Are you suggesting that this is an individual thing for 30-something thousand?
Excellent question, excellent question. So the individualized is not about having 34,000 different tests. What you're doing is that each child, so remember each child now during school writes homework, writes school assignments. So it is the individual performance of the child. It is the accumulation of the different tasks and assignments that the child has done that you use to determine where the child goes. So it is throughout the school life. And it's important to note that one of our challenges as an education system is that we test too many. We have too many tests across the period of grade 4 to grade 6. There are 30-odd tests. In addition to, so let's list them. We have the tests that are done, the homework tests. We have the midterm tests. We have the end of year tests. All right. In addition to all of those, we then have 3 weekly tests in most of our schools, plus these exams at the end of grade 4, grade 5, grade 6. To what end are we testing so much?
Yeah.
And what are we doing with the results? My argument is that let us reduce the number of tests, transform the experience into a child's journey, look at the child's performance, and then based on the child's interests and performance, you then assign them to a high school based on that.
You didn't come for this reason, but I was very annoyed when we actually called the high school's name, and I was upset with that. That there's a high school that said, I think about 70 or 80% of their first formers cannot read. All right.
Yes.
How would them reach there, sir?
Excellent question. So 3 things about that. It demonstrates, firstly, how flawed and how failing the primary school system is, that despite all these tests, 70% of your children who are at grade, now ready for grade 7, first form, are reading at grade 3. So, yeah, right, so the failure. So we ask the question, what are the possible reasons for that failure? And part of the reason for that failure is the resources of the school. But here is the other rub. It also shows how invalid the test is, that despite being unable to read, they are moved to the next level. So what should happen to those children is that there should have been a customized program of development which recognized their competences and their challenges when they were age 6. And then the intervention that you would use would treat or take account of their learning difficulties. Some of those children might be hearing impaired, visual impaired, all other kinds of challenges. So you'd address those by treating them individually rather than treating them as part of a mass group.
But you know, Prof, many persons may say this is a great idea, and it may be an idea that has been done with developed countries, but we have our limitations. We have our resources, lack of resources, and all of the other things. You compare the rural schools in comparison to the schools in the urban spaces as well, and that comes with its own challenges, you know. How can we get to that point where we kind of implement this system, the ILPs, all of these things, and we don't have the kind of resources?
Yeah, I am sympathetic to the view that resources are constrained, and it is a constraint. But I believe that there's a higher principle which ought to instruct this dialogue, and it's prioritization. We find the money to do the things we deem to be priority. I won't go into some of the stories of how we spend some money in this country. If there were a more targeted and visionary approach to allocation of public resources, we could find the money to improve the education system. What I'm describing can't happen overnight, but we can implement it and move incrementally to it being at a higher level.
Okay. Somebody may ask, you know, are we really fitting our kids then? Are we challenging them enough? If we're just meeting them where they are we challenging them enough for the world?
Excellent question. So one of the things that these countries I mentioned in the article after the newspaper report, places like Germany and Singapore and Brazil and Sweden, they set what we call the national standards. So they articulate what it is or what should a citizen at the end of grade 6 or the end of grade 11 look like. So it's not as though you're just training children blindly. They articulate a vision in their national curriculum. But what they do after that is that different regions of the country will then apply that policy and implement it based on the realities of those contexts. I'll give an example. Germany, as you know, have a lot of people who migrate from Africa, jump over the fences and so on. And there are sections of that country where many children, their first language is not German, but maybe French or some other African language. The national curriculum is applied to those students, but customized to the realities of those areas where children are at a different level.
Okay.
Understood.
We have to go. By the way, 33,462 students across 964 institutions registered for PEP. 89.5% were placed in one of their 7 preferred schools. 56% of students achieved overall proficiency, while 7% were deemed highly proficient. Subject-specific results showed 67% proficiency in language arts, 56% in math, 61% in science, and 58% in social studies. To those who have made it to a higher grade, congratulations.
Yeah.
Have some fun. It gets a little tougher, but it's the only time you'll do it in your life. So just deal with it and then you will move on. Professor, great to see you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
University of the West Indies Professor in Educational Policy, Planning and Leadership, Professor Knut Thompson. I said this before, but when we come back, apart from coping mentally with PEP, we're going to cope mentally or you go back to school period. Some of us didn't want to go back. So come.